Hello, YouTube buddies. Kahaku Creations here. It's been a minute, a long minute. The last 3 weeks have been like incredibly hard. The last month, actually. Where do I even start? So, when I used to live in Texas, and when I moved back home, I wasn't even home for like a couple of months, and because I was staying with my parents, and as soon as I got like my own place, my uncle gives me a call, and he's like, well, Grandma's in the hospital. So I was like, okay. So I rushed to the hospital, and he hands me like her cards, and he's like, well, here you go. She had a stroke, and yeah, my wife is here. I have to leave. So, I mean, and then I was just like, okay. And that was it. Like, I had Grandma, and I've been taking care of Grandma for, this is about, like, this was like the 5th year. And I've moved like 3 times throughout it, and Grandma's lived with me, and there was a few times where it got really hard, and my mom took Grandma in for a little bit, but my mom has a lot going on at her home too. So Grandma ended up moving back, and it was just like this the last couple months that Grandma moved back, and she didn't stay with my mom very long. She stayed with my mom like a couple of months. 4 to 6 months maybe. So Grandma's been with me most of the time. And so the second time Grandma moved back, like, was in the summer, and I noticed that she was getting weaker, and there was a day where she didn't even want to get up and go to the bathroom anymore. 'Cause she used to smoke, and she used to drink, so she was, she liked to party pretty heavy. That was Grandma. We loved her, regardless. People have their, their addictions, and not that it was a good thing to have an addiction, but the way we always looked at it was, it's like someone having a disease. So we just kind of worked with her, and the dementia had started to set in, and because the dementia had set in, we, oh, I put that too low. I wanted some music just a little bit. Because the dementia had set in, yeah, she wasn't drinking and smoking as much, so it was a little bit easier to cut her off. She went from like 6 beers a day after a few months and knocked it to 5, after a few months and knocked it to 4, after a few months, So this went on, I'd say this went on the whole time. The last 6 or 7 months, I finally got her down to 1 a day. And I got her to quit smoking completely, because I was like, okay, we're only going to have this many this week. And then slowly I started to take, like, every week I would take like 1 out. And so I slowly got her down to where she was smoking like 1 a day, and she would smoke like half in the morning and then the other half like in the evening. And eventually she, didn't need to smoke anymore. And like I said, it was probably the dementia, because it made her not really want to leave much. She would watch TV, and she would eat her breakfast. She never wanted lunch. Never wanted lunch. I would like sitting down and try to talk to her, like, come on, Grandma, one more bite. One more bite. Just take a bite from me. And then she would have her dinner, and she would nap. She would nap a lot. And I just figured, it's part of being old. I've never raised an old lady before, so I was like, oh, it's just part of being old. And she would come out of her room when I would be sewing, and she would sit there, and she would watch me sew, and I would talk to her about the things I'm making, and she would talk about the things she used to make, because her eyesight was going bad, and she couldn't see as much, and she couldn't see as well. So she would kind of tell me, oh, I used to make things like this, and this is how I would do a zipper, and this is how I would do this. And so she would kind of give me tips without like showing me, and I try to, figure it out. Because like I'll say that I'm self-taught, which for the most part, like, Grandma showed me things, but she didn't it wasn't like a one-on-one course where she sat and told me exactly how to do every single thing. She would just kind of give me like ideas and kind of guide me in spots that she remembered. because like her dementia was really bad. She would come out of her room, and we'd sit and I'd sew, and we'd talk for a long time, and I'd show her what I was working on, and she would tell me, "Oh, Mija, good job, this looks so good." And then she would be like, "Okay, I'm a little sleepy, I'm gonna go to my room for a little bit." And I'm like, "Okay, Grandma, I'll see you in a little bit." And then 20 minutes later, she'd come out of the room, and she'd see me sewing, and she'd be like, "There you are, I was looking for you all morning." She'd spent the whole morning with me. So I would just be like, "Oh, no, I'm right here, Grandma. I'm right here sewing. You don't have to worry about me." Because, you know, I didn't want her to feel bad about, like, forgetting things. Like, but Grandma's memory it wasn't too bad. Like, she would remember things from the past. She would remember who we were. She always had amazing stories to tell. And then, but she couldn't remember, like, if she had breakfast this morning. And that's kind of, like, the one thing, because my memory is getting bad. And that's kind of one of the things I always say is, like, "Oh, well, you know, I can't even remember if I had breakfast today." And sometimes I don't. I think it's part of aging. It's part of getting older. So, yeah, this last time that Grandma moved back, she spent the whole day, or she didn't even want to leave her room, because she was pretty independent. She would, like, walk to the bathroom and walk to throw away her trash, like, in the kitchen, and go for walks outside just to sit in the sun, because Grandma was always cold. She was always cold, so she liked to sit outside in the sun, and that's kind of one of the things I like to do, too. She didn't want to leave her room anymore, and I spent the whole day, like, working on commissions and stuff, and I would get up and I would check on her, and she would say she was fine, and by the end of the evening, I was like, "Grandma, I don't even think you went to the restroom today." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't?" So I got her to stand up and walk over to her bed, because we always kept, like, a plastic thing over her bed for, like a padding. It was fabric on one side, but plastic on the other, because Grandma had accidents. That's part of being old. And so I, like, checked her, and she had, like, gone to the bathroom on herself. And I was like, "Grandma, like, what happened?" And she was like, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't even realize I did this." So then I had to walk her to the bathroom and, you know, give her a shower and stuff. And then I noticed, like, the next day she did the same thing. And the next day, like, so it started to really worry me. So I took her to the hospital, because she didn't want to eat either. And I was really worried, and they said that because she was complaining a lot about her back pain. Like, "I'm in a lot of pain in my back." And I was like, "Okay, Grandma." So I took her to the hospital, and they said that she was dehydrated. And, you know, I understood, because I had a hard time trying to get her to eat and drink anything. Like, it was to a point where she didn't want to have a beer anymore. Like, that was my way to get her to eat. I would be like, "Hey, Grandma," she would be like, "Can I have a beer?" And I'm like, yeah, you can have one, but I need you to eat this. I need you to take a few more bites, just a few more bites. And then she'd be like, "Oh, okay." And she would eat for a few more bites, and then she'd like, "Can I have one now?" And I was like, you know, you almost ate half of it. Just a couple more bites. Just, please, Grandma, just a couple more bites for me, so I know you're eating. And then, you know, I would bring in a beer, and then she would, like, finish it with her beer, or she would just, like, push it aside, and she would drink half the beer. But it became to where she would only drink half, to where she didn't even want to drink any, to where she would have one sip. And sometimes I'd come in to clean her room after dinner, and the beer would be full, like, she didn't even touch it. So, yeah, they said she was dehydrated, and she had a bladder infection. And the doctor was so rude. He was like, "I suggest you put her into a home, because obviously you don't know what you're doing." And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to lie. I don't know what I'm doing. My mom comes, and she helps me, and she gets Grandma to eat, and then I work hard getting Grandma to eat. And, you know, we give her a lot of water. We give her plenty of water, but she didn't want it sometimes. And so, and I try to give her fruit and other things to keep her hydrated. But she just, and they said it was part of the dementia. The nurses and stuff they were really nice, and they were like, "You know, dementia does this, makes people not want to eat or drink anything, and you know, it's not anything you guys have done. It's, you know, part of what Grandma's going through." And so, you know, I would just work hard trying to take care of Grandma. And so they said that her back pain was from the bladder infection, and they, you know, gave her meds and everything, and they sent her home with antibiotics, and you know, we just try to give her extra cups of water, and we try to sit there, and we try to get her to drink more. And my mom works like a split shift, so she would work early in the morning from like 4 to 9, and then at 9:30 she would show up, and she'd hang out for like an hour, you know, waking Grandma up and giving her breakfast so I could sleep in a little bit. Because God knows my sleeping habits are horrible. I sleep like 2 or 3 hours here and there, and then, you know, get up, take the kids to school, and then I try to get another nap in before, you know, I start my day with my commissions and my hair clients, because I have hair clients too that I do between the commissions. So my mom tried to help best she could also. So, you know, Grandma came back, and it's still, she didn't want to walk anymore. She didn't want to, well, she would walk from her chair to her bed, but that wasn't very far, because like she had like this little blue lazy boy chair, and I put pillows around it to make her comfy. And so she would walk from her chair to her bed, and from her bed to her chair, and like that was her day. And I tried to get her to leave the room, and she didn't want to. And, you know, that's okay. Grandma didn't want to leave the room, but, you know, she was still eating and drinking, and she looked like she was getting better. And so, you know, it became a thing where, you know, in the morning we'd change her diaper, and at lunch, you know, after lunch I would change her, and then I would change her again at night. And, you know, every other day we'd give her a bath. And it got to the point where, like, she didn't want to walk at all anymore. And I started to really worry. And I called her doctor, and the doctor was like, oh, it's part of her dementia. She doesn't want to walk. And I was like, okay. Well, because she's telling herself that her legs don't want to work. And so that's why she doesn't want to walk. That was, you know, what the doctors told us. And I was like, okay. And the doctors always said that, you know, oh, for being a drinker and a smoker, like, all her insides are really good. Like, she's really, really healthy. And, you know, I believed it. I believed Grandma had, like, years still. You know, she was 79. At her birthday, this coming up year, she would have been 80. And so I was like, all right, you know, just one day at a time. It's the dementia is what they kept telling me. It's her dementia. And then this last month, like, she didn't want to, like, she didn't want to use her legs at all. And, you know, I would try to get her legs, and I would try to, like, bend her knees and, like, exercise her little legs. And I was like, come on, Grandma, you got this. And she would, even with her walker, she would grab on the sides, and she'd be like, come on, Dottie, you got this, Dottie, you got this. And she would try to lift herself up, and I could tell she was struggling pretty bad. And I would sit there with her, and for, like, half an hour, I would see her, like, trying to get up. And I was like, okay, you know, don't try anymore. I'll help you. So then I would take her hands, and I would hold her hands, and, you know, she would use me to pull herself up, but it was more like I was holding her. And so, like, my back hurts. It still hurts, because my back hurt a lot from, you know, trying to help her up all the time. And so, yeah, it got to a point where she didn't really want to, like, walk anymore. And I was like, is this part of dementia? This can't be, you know, this is weird. And then she didn't want to use, like, one of her hands. Like, she would try to lift it up, and then she would be, like, looking at it, like, she's trying, like, move hand. And I would get, like, frustrated and upset because I didn't know what was going on. And I know, like, a few times in the hobby, like, I had got upset with people that I didn't even have a reason to be upset with. And when I realized that I was projecting that frustration in another direction, I would apologize. And, you know, I've had people, like, call me a bully, and I was like, I wasn't bullying, you know. Somebody made a punk vest, and it never bothered me before. Like, I've seen their vests. They're good. They're cute. And the only thing is the same as their patches, like mine. And I don't know, it was one of those days where I was really frustrated, and I was, like, scared for Grandma. And I came across this vest, and they were like, oh, I make these, I sell these. And I was like, hey, that's kind of what I do. That's not nice. But there was no reason for that. So, you know, me and this person squashed it. And I didn't come at them like a crazy person. You know, I was just kind of like, you know, if you're a follower of mine, why would you want to, you know, copy me? But it wasn't copying. And that was the thing. And I talked to them, and we worked it out. And so it got squashed. Again, I'll publicly, like, apologize. I was having a bad day. We have bad days, and I realized I projected my frustration in a negative way, and I shouldn't have. And I apologize again to you. You know who you are. And it wasn't anybody's fault. You know, I was frustrated with what was going on with Grandma because I was scared and I wasn't sure. You know, what was I never raised an old lady before, like I said. So. A couple weeks later, well, because that week she didn't want to use one hand, and then the following week she didn't want to use the other, and I was like, okay, now I'm changing her diapers. I'm picking her up, because she's not even shuffling anymore. She would, like, get up, I would help her up, and she would shuffle her little feet over to her bed, but she couldn't even, like, she was like, I can't get up at all, I can't use my legs, so we were freaking out, because we didn't know what was happening, and again, I called the doctor, and they're like, oh, it's her dementia. And I'm like, this can't be right. It can't be dementia. Like, she can't be, her dementia is just telling her, like, your arm doesn't work, or your feet don't work, and then you just stop using them. Like, is that really how it works? And if it works that way, does it work so fast that it's, like, within days and weeks that happens? So I was really, like, scared. I was really, really scared. And, not this past week, but the week before. This is hard to talk about. I couldn't get her to eat. And my mom came that morning and made her a sandwich. And we got her to eat a little bit of the sandwich. And my mom put it away in the fridge. But the kids stayed home that day. I don't know why the kids wanted to stay home. Like, they just didn't want to go. And I was, like, tired because I had been, you know, taking care of Grandma. And the diaper changing would happen, like, I would change her in the evening, and then sometimes in the middle of the night, if I walked by her room and there was, like, a smell, I would, you know, change her again. So, I mean, it would be, like, 2 or 3 in the morning where I'd be, you know, in her room. So I was, like, exhausted because it was getting really, really hard. And so I was just like, this isn't right now. She's going to get dehydrated again, and I'm worried because now she doesn't want to eat. And, you know, I'll see she's getting skinnier, and Grandma was already like 80 pounds, and she was getting tiny, and it was too scary. And I called my mom, and I told her, you know, I can't get her to eat. I'm gonna take her to the hospital. And my mom was like, calm down, I'll come by, because she never came by because she drives a bus. So she never came by, and she was like, well, one of my clients didn't come in today, so I have like a little time between clients, so I'll stop at your house and I'll come by and I'll see if I can get Grandma to eat. Because the kids stayed home and they wanted pizza, and we eat pizza a lot at my house because, you know, I have 4 kids and Grandma, and so the kids like to eat pizza. But Grandma, I was trying to feed, I cut it into little pieces, and I was trying to feed it to her, and she's spitting it out, and I was like, okay, so this isn't right. So she was spitting it out, and she didn't want to eat, so my mom came over, and my mom got her to take a couple bites of her sandwich from earlier this morning. And I was in the room with Grandma, and my mom had gone to wash her hands, and she came back. Or she was coming back, and I was in there with Grandma, and I was like, well, Grandma, you know, if you don't want to eat what I have here to eat, and you want me to buy you special things, and if that's going to get you to eat, then I'll go ahead and do that. I was like, but we're probably going to go to the hospital tonight. Is that okay? And then she didn't respond. She's kind of like looked down, and then like closed her eyes, and I was like, Grandma. She didn't want to move. She didn't want to wake up. And then my mom was like, and then I was like, Mom, because I was scared. I called my mom, and my mom comes around the corner, was like, what's going on? And I was like, she's not responding. I'm calling 911. So I stepped out of the room. My son Nathaniel, he heard me. So he took the smaller ones, and he went to his room. His room's like in the back of the house. So he took the smaller ones to the back of the house. And I got on the phone, and then they were telling me, okay, go see if there's anything blocking her air, like, to where she can't breathe. And, I mean, they asked for the address first. And then, so then I went back in the room, and my mom was like, I'm going to run outside and move my bus so the ambulance can come. So my mom went outside to move the bus, and the operator told me to pick her up and put her on the ground. So I picked her up, and I put her on the ground. And they said, okay, make sure there's nothing underneath her. So I moved her pillow from underneath her. And they're like, okay, lay her flat, tilt her head, watch her chest. Is she breathing? And I'm like, yeah, she's breathing. It's shallow. It's really shallow. And they were like, okay, just every time she takes a breath, say now. So I was telling them, and then I could hear my mom in the background calling her boss, telling her boss what had happened, and she was crying, and I was trying to just listen to the operator and tell them, now. And she was like, okay, was she eating it? And I was like, yeah, she was eating something, but we did a swipe and there's nothing there. And I was like, am I performing CPR? And they're like, no, she's breathing, she's okay. Not yet. And because I'm trained in CPR, but, I've never had to use it. So, anyways, so then, I just kept telling them how many breaths she was taking. And then eventually she opened her eyes and she looked around and she looked like she was scared. And I was like, okay, she's awake. And she was kind of groaning. And then the operator was like, okay, just stay with me. Is that her? And I was like, yeah, that's her groaning. And they're like, okay, ask her questions. Does she talk? And I was like, yeah, she talks. And they were like, okay, ask her questions. But she wasn't responding. She wasn't even like shaking her head yes or no. There was no response. She was just kind of like looking around and like groaning, but she was still breathing. So then the paramedics came. And I had to let the lady know when the paramedics got there. And then we kind of explained briefly to the paramedics while they were checking her pulse and everything. And putting her in the gurney and, kind of explained to them what was happening. And I noticed they thought maybe like her blood sugar was low, which Grandma's not diabetic, but I don't know if that's something they check. So they poked her finger, and Grandma hates needles. Like, she would have jumped and screamed, but there was nothing. And I was like, okay, so she really can't use her hand. It wasn't that, she told herself she really couldn't feel it. That's when I realized, like, none of this is right. This isn't right. And that happened on Thursday, I think. Yeah, I think it was Thursday. And then they said that she had had a stroke. So me and my mom followed them to the hospital, and we were there for a long time. And we were waiting for like a good hour and a half, and then I was like, can I go in the back? Can I see her? How is she? Is she okay? And they're like, oh, no, they're still prepping her. And I was like, prepping her for what? Like, where's my grandma? I want to see my grandma. So then a nurse came out, and she took me and my mom to the back, and she put us into a room with couches, and I was like, how come I can't see her? What's going on? And the doctor came in, and the doctor's like, she had another stroke, and we had to manually perform CPR. And so we got her, we resuscitated her. She came back, and then we went to do an MRI, and it happened again. And so we had to use a breathing machine, but it was just a precaution. So it looks really dramatic. So just, prepare yourselves. And we're like, okay, she's not dead though. And they're like, no, she's not. And so we went to see her, and she was in the breathing machine. It was really hard. It was really hard to see her. And it was really hard. And so the next day they tried to do another MRI, and she had another stroke. So it was just like, maybe I jumped ahead. I think she had one. No, she had one when she got there. And then it was the following day when they did the MRI, and then she had another one. So we just spent a lot of time at the hospital. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then Saturday, the doctors told us that, she was getting a little bit better, that she was paralyzed on one side because of the stroke. But she, with some therapy, there was hope. So, we believed them. We were like, okay, that's awesome. And then Sunday, we went to see her, and they told us that she was complaining that she was having neck pain. She always complained about her back. She always did. I took her to the doctor constantly, and they would say, oh, it's because she's old and she isn't walking, so her bones are weak or her bones are tired, is what they told us. She was complaining about her back hurting, and she was complaining about her neck, so they checked her, and she had 4 vertebrae that had collapsed in her neck, and we were like, how does that happen? And the doctor was like, well, did she fall? And I was like, no, she didn't fall. Like, me and Nay would, like, pick her up together, and we would carry her to her bed. And we would pick her up together, and we would carry her to her chair. And I always had my hands like under her arm when I would pick her up, and I would pick up her legs. And you know, she was light. She was like 80 pounds, 80 to 60 pounds. You know, she was really light. So we went together for two people to pick her up. She was really light. By myself, she was pretty heavy. So we were like, no, she never fell. She never felt like she didn't fall. Like, Grandma was well taken care of, you know? And they told us, well, she fell and she broke her 4 vertebrae, collapsed in her neck, and she's paralyzed. And so we were like, okay. But Grandma got the tube removed, and she was talking. She was alive, and that was all that mattered. So then the lady on Monday, we got this call, actually Sunday night. This lady, and she was from hospice, and she was like, I'm going to meet with you guys on Monday, because there's nothing the hospital can do anymore. She's got a neck brace now, so we're going to meet with you the following day. She's like, I'll meet you guys at 9, and we'll talk about what's the situation with Grandma. And so we met with the lady, and she was like, so what we do is my company, we provide you with the bed and oxygen and anything she needs, and we have nurses come in and check on her. And so we were like, okay, you know, if Grandma's paralyzed, you know, there's nothing we can do. And it just happened so fast. And so we're like, okay, take care of Grandma. We love Grandma, of course. So, she was like, especially after her condition, and she kind of showed me a paper, and I saw something that said lung tumor, and I was like, wait, what? And, I was like, wait, what happened? What? Like, I didn't hear, we didn't know this. I've been taking her for 5 years to see her doctor, and her doctor says that she's healthy. So, what? So then, the other doctor came in, the doctor had seen her that night, and I was like, please, can you explain what's happening? And he said that she had lung cancer, and that the tumor had got so big that it started to spread to the rest of her body, and it spread to her muscles, her bones, and it made her bones weak, and that caused her neck to break. And we were like, what? Cancer? And we never knew Grandma had cancer. So, like, you're telling me that my grandma has been suffering from cancer this whole time? Like, shouldn't her doctors know this? So Grandma came home Monday. They set up her bed and everything. We came like at 2 o'clock. They came and they set up oxygen and they set up her bed. And they had the hospice company picked her up, and they actually dropped her off at 5 o'clock. And one of my cousins rode with her because I had to stay home and prepare. So Grandma came home at 5 o'clock, and then I just, would go in there and feed her and talk to her, and we just hung out with her. And Wednesday night, me and the kids were in there, and because she came home Monday, so yeah, Wednesday night we came home. I was there the whole time. I've been with Grandma the whole time. So Wednesday, I spent the whole evening. We were watching wrestling. She liked to watch wrestling. I don't know. She thought it was funny for the men to toss each other around. It was like her favorite thing to watch. So maybe that's where I got my like for the stripes. The violence is from Grandma. But so we watched wrestling, and we were kind of laughing at the guys. And then she was like, I don't really want to watch this anymore. And that was strange because it was like her favorite thing to watch. And I was like, okay, Grandma, you don't have to watch this. And the kids came in and told her they loved her. And then she was like, I love you guys. I love you all. And then, like, she was crying. Like, tears came down her face. And she's like, I love everybody so much. And I was like, we love you too, Grandma. And I didn't know if, it was just strange that she had said that. That was like she never said it like that before. She would be like, I love you, or, you know, I love you guys too. But she never would be like, I love everybody so much. And so it was kind of alarming. But, you know, I was like, well, you know, she's been through a lot. And she just kept saying, I'm sorry that I'm making things so difficult for you. And I was like, you're not making them difficult for me. I don't care that, you know, I don't care if I have to change you like this and take care of you like this. Like, you're my grandma and I love you. I want to do this because you're still with me. And so, Thursday, I went in there and she wasn't talking. And she was just like, she would breathe and then she would let out the sound that sounded like she was saying no. And so her breathing was kind of shallow, and so it scared me. So I called the hospice, and they sent a nurse over right away. And the nurse was like, gave her some extra, because she was already on morphine. So the nurse gave her a little something extra and said that it was, that she was in pain, that the noise was because she was in pain, so they gave her something else. And that helped her sleep. And, she said she would send another doctor to come look at her. And then, like, her main doctor came. And the other doctor came in, because that was early in the morning, so the nurse came, like, at 8 or 9. And she came at 9, because that's, like, my mom showed up shortly after. So the nurse came at 9. And, she said that, you know, Grandma was in a lot of pain. And then the other nurse would be here shortly, and the other nurse showed up around 12:30 or 1.